The chamber wasn't quiet, it was charged. Cameras already rolling, microphones hot, staffers crowding the back rows. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez leaned forward, sharp, rehearsed, eyes fixed on the witness table. "Kash Patel," she said, her tone clipped, "you are the reason this system is broken. You undermine accountability. You're a disgrace to public service." The words sliced through the hearing, bold and brutal, designed to land like a headline. The crowd shifted, a few chuckles, even a smattering of applause from her corner. But Patel didn't flinch. He didn't shuffle his notes. He didn't look down. He leaned into his mic, calm, steady. "Congresswoman," he said, "if I'm a disgrace, then maybe you should explain why the record shows your office signed the very documents you are attacking today." The laughter vanished. The camera zoomed, and the silence that followed was heavier than the insult that started it. Like and subscribe, because sometimes the career-ending moment isn't the insult, it's the reply. Some hearings are staged for spectacle. This one turned into a spectacle of collapse. The room was built for control. Flags flanked the dais, the seal loomed overhead, and rows of staffers filled the back wall, each with clipboards and whispering headsets. This wasn't just a hearing, it was a broadcast. Every word, every glare, every pause was already destined for Twitter clips and cable news segments. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez walked in like she owned that script. Papers stacked neatly, pen in hand, the rhythm of her arguments already rehearsed. She was here not to ask questions, but to set traps. The goal was clear: corner the witness, humiliate him, and walk out with the viral moment she needed. The witness was Kash Patel, a former national security official, seasoned in the kinds of rooms where questions are weapons and silence can be more damaging than words. He sat still, hands folded over a thin folder, expression calm. If you didn't know better, you'd think he was unprepared. If you did know better, you'd realize he didn't need to carry much, because what mattered was already in the record. The chair began with formality, outlining the purpose of the hearing. Most in the room weren't listening. The audience, staffers, reporters, viewers at home, were waiting for AOC's first strike. Everyone knew it was coming. She was built for this, bold, sharp, unflinching. When her turn arrived, she wasted no time. No warm-up, no preamble. She leaned forward, eyes locked on Patel. The microphones hummed, catching the edge in her voice. "Mr. Patel, you have undermined investigations, you have stonewalled oversight, and you have made a mockery of accountability. You are a disgrace to public service." It landed like a slap, gasps, a few chuckles, even scattered applause from her side of the aisle. The clip was already forming in people's heads. Her words, his silence. The headline: AOC calls out Patel to his face. That was the plan. That was the script. But scripts only work if the other actor follows along. Patel didn't shuffle his notes. He didn't stammer. He didn't even blink. He let the applause die down, let the camera zoom in, and then, calm, steady, surgical, he leaned into the mic. "Congresswoman," he said, "if I'm a disgrace, then perhaps you should explain why the record shows it was your office that signed off on the very documents you're condemning today." The room didn't gasp this time. It froze. The script had been torn in half, and AOC was suddenly no longer the examiner. She was the examined. An attack is only deadly when the target plays along. Patel didn't. AOC wasn't used to silence like this. Usually her barbs drew claps, laughter, a ripple of energy she could ride to the next blow. But Patel's reply had left the air thick, expectant, and dangerously still. So she doubled down. "Mr. Patel," she said sharply, "you can try to deflect, but the American people know the truth. They know you lied to investigators. They know you obstructed justice. They know you don't belong in a position of public trust." The words were crisp, confident, punctuated by the faint applause of her allies behind her. She was building the clip she wanted. Patel pinned, flustered, humiliated. But the man at the witness table didn't look humiliated. He looked steady. He looked patient. He looked like he'd been here before. Patel leaned forward again, his voice quieter than hers but carrying further because of it. "Congresswoman, If the American people know so much, then they also deserve to know this. He opened his folder, slid out a single sheet of paper, and held it up just long enough for the cameras to catch the header. Congressional Office Authorization. This, Patel said, is signed by your staff, dated, stamped. The very approval that allowed the action you're now condemning. If it's corruption you want to expose, start with your own signature. The silence was instant. The staffers in the back stopped scribbling. Reporters froze mid-sentence. Phones lifted higher. AOC blinked, shook her head, tried to interject. That's completely out of context. Patel cut her off without raising his voice. Context doesn't erase ink, Congresswoman. And the ink is yours. The audience didn't clap. They didn't laugh. They leaned forward. And in hearings like this, leaning forward is more dangerous than shouting back. It meant the ground had shifted, and everyone knew it. When the witness becomes the examiner, the script burns. Patel didn't rush. He didn't wave the paper like a prop. He just laid it flat on the desk, tapped it once with his finger, and looked at AOC as though she had asked the question he'd been waiting for all along. Congresswoman, he said, steady, measured, I am here under oath. That means every word I say can be tested, and so can every word you've put on paper. This authorization's dated, stamped, and signed came from your office. It is not an interpretation. It is not a rumor. It is your record. The crowd murmured, a ripple of unease that rolled from the press benches to the staffers behind her. The sound wasn't loud, but it was enough to break her rhythm. AOC leaned forward, sharper now. You're twisting this. My staff signs hundreds of authorizations every week. Patel raised a hand, not rudely, but firmly. Then why accuse me of undermining oversight for following the path your office cleared? The words hit like a trap snapping shut. The silence was brutal. Reporters' pens hovered midair. One staffer in the back mouthed, "Oh no." Cameras zoomed tighter on AOC's face, catching the flicker of hesitation. Patel didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He just leaned back, his hands folded again, like a man finished with his work. Accountability matters, Congresswoman. But accountability starts with telling the truth about our own role in the record. That was the moment the room flipped. What began as her stage had turned into his. The laughter she expected was gone, replaced by the heavier, more dangerous weight of attention. Nothing kills a performance faster than the wrong kind of silence. The gavel didn't move. The chair didn't speak. The room wasn't erupting into cheers or laughter anymore. It was holding its breath. And that was worse for AOC than any chorus of boos, because applause can be spun, boos can be mocked, but silence? Silence says we heard you, and we're weighing it against what we just saw. AOC tried to recover, pressing forward with a new angle. Numbers, oversight reports, broad condemnations of systemic corruption. Normally, her delivery would have carried weight. She was sharp, confident, unflinching. But after Patel's reply, the words landed differently. They sounded like noise against a room that had already decided where its attention belonged. Patel didn't interrupt. He didn't grandstand. He just sat, hands folded, waiting. And that waiting was devastating. Every new line from AOC sounded like overcompensation. Every accusation seemed less like truth and more like a scramble. Reporters noticed. They scribbled less about her charges and more about her tone. Visibly shaken. Pressed but faltering. One even typed a line that would headline within hours. Patel stays calm. AOC loses the room. The silence grew heavier. Staffers shifted in their seats. The audience leaned forward, not toward AOC, but toward Patel, the man who had barely raised his voice yet now held the entire chamber. And AOC realized too late that she wasn't leading the hearing anymore. She was chasing it. Some moments stay trapped in the transcript. Others slip out before the gavel falls. The committee was still in session, but the story was already gone. Not drifting, waiting. By the time AOC raised her voice again, the back rows of the chamber were glowing with phone screens, reporters sending clips faster than stenographers could type. What was once supposed to be a staged humiliation had inverted into a live broadcast of self-destruction. The first edits were crude, 30 seconds of footage. AOC's sharp, "You're a disgrace to public service," followed immediately by Patel's calm reply. "Then perhaps you should explain why your office signed the very documents you're condemning." The contrast didn't need commentary, it carried itself. Inside the chamber, AOC pressed forward, her voice tightening as she rolled through statistics, corruption cases, institutional failures. It should have sounded commanding. Instead, it sounded like filler over silence, because silence was where the story lived. The audience wasn't reacting to her words anymore. Their heads weren't nodding, their pens weren't racing. They were staring, some at Patel, some at their screens, some at each other, all recognizing that the line had already slipped the leash. And outside the building, the wildfire spread. On Twitter, the clip appeared first in shaky resolution, captioned, "AOC just got destroyed on live TV." Within minutes, it was polished by professional accounts. Side-by-side split screen, her glare, his calm, the exact moment the room froze. Headlines were already forming in real time. Humiliation turns on AOC. Patel flips the record. The signature she couldn't deny. Cable producers watching the feed from glass towers uptown called their control rooms. "Cut this. Run it tonight." B-roll of the interruption, then Patel's line. Nothing else. They didn't care about the rest of the hearing. They cared about the 10 seconds that told the whole story. Back inside, staffers behind AOC knew what was happening. One leaned close and whispered urgently, "We're losing the room. Don't feed it." Another stared blankly at their tablet, watching the view count climb in real time. 10,000, 50,000, 120,000. Numbers rising faster than AOC could finish her paragraph. Patel sat still, almost detached, as if he'd already left the room mentally. And in a way, he had, because the silence was doing the work for him. He didn't need to speak again. Every second AOC kept talking only highlighted the line she couldn't erase. The chair tried to move the hearing forward. "Let's proceed," he said, voice weary. But the audience wasn't proceeding. The press gallery wasn't proceeding. Twitter wasn't proceeding. Everyone was circling the same 30-second loop, replaying it like a scene too unbelievable to have just happened. And that was the brutal irony. AOC had wanted a clip that would travel beyond the chamber. She got one. Just not the one she rehearsed. Real defeat isn't when the gavel falls. It's when the faces in the room change expression. For a few seconds after Patel laid the paper flat, AOC pressed forward, refusing to yield. She layered on statistics, oversight reports, claims of corruption. Her delivery was polished, just as it always was, but the problem wasn't polish anymore. The problem was that nobody looked at her the same way. Reporters weren't scribbling quotes to headline her charge. They were scribbling notes about the reaction, her raised tone, her sharper hand gestures, the way her voice strained against silence. One typed, "Lost composure after Patel counters with record." Another, "Confidence falters, room belongs to him." She glanced across the gallery, and that was the moment she saw it. Faces, dozens of them, not angry, not amused, just leaning the wrong way. They weren't leaning in toward her. They were leaning toward Patel. The stillness around him was louder than her words. Staffers on her own side were shifting nervously, some staring down at their binders as if hiding from the cameras. Patel's aides, by contrast, looked utterly relaxed, even bored, as though they knew their man had already won and were just waiting for the final gavel to confirm it. And Patel? He didn't move, didn't gloat, didn't even look directly at her. He sat with his hands folded, eyes steady on the desk, like a teacher waiting for the student to finish arguing with a math equation. The more she talked, the less it mattered. The silence spread, and with it came the realization. Not because anyone told her, not because anyone booed, but because the faces in the room gave it away. This wasn't her moment anymore. It was his. The deadliest blow isn't shouted. It's spoken once, then replayed forever. The chair glanced at the clock, desperate to move the session on. The gavel hovered, ready to close out what was supposed to be another routine headline for AOC. But the room wasn't routine anymore. It was heavy. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a shift. AOC tried one last push, her words spilling in practiced cadence about justice, accountability, the people. But it didn't land. It sounded like echoes in a hall already emptied of attention. And that was when Patel moved. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned into his microphone for the last time. He didn't shuffle his notes, he didn't gesture. He just spoke, steady as stone. Congresswoman, humiliation only works if the facts are on your side. Today they weren't. No one clapped, no one jeered. The silence was worse. It was agreement. The kind of silence that says, it's over. The gavel finally struck wood, but it wasn't the chair who ended the session. It was Patel, with one sentence that didn't need a rebuttal, didn't need a repeat. The clip was already sealed, packaged, and traveling beyond those walls. By nightfall, it was everywhere. Side-by-side edits of her glare and his calm. Captions screaming, AOC humiliated. Commentators saying it outright, this could haunt her for years. And Patel, he didn't chase the cameras. He didn't tweet victory. He walked out slowly, folder tucked under his arm, as though he hadn't ended a career, just finished a workday. One attempt at humiliation. One piece of evidence. One line that turned the chamber silent. Did Kash Patel just end AOC's career, or was this simply one brutal moment she'll recover from? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't miss our last story. Obama slams Trump on live TV. Seconds later, J.D. Vance delivers the line that ends him. That one shook the stage, and it's on your screen now.